Well, hello and welcome to Science Week 2020. I'm Jonathan McCrea. As I'm sure you're aware, Science Week takes place from the 8th to the 15th of November, and this year it marks its 25th anniversary. And the theme this year is choosing our future. And we've all seen how the public has turned to science to understand the current pandemic. But in fact, many of the choices that we make today influence how we work, play, and live into the future. So this year, Science Foundation Ireland is hoping to kickstart conversations amongst the public about what they want for the future of Ireland and how science can and should be helping in making that a reality. So SFI has developed a discussion toolkit for community groups and secondary schools to host a discussion on 4 topic areas. They are vaccines, ethics and AI, genomics, and future cities. And you can find that toolkit on the Science Week website now. So today we're going to explore some of those ideas, and to sort of kick things off, we're joined now by 3 students to discuss what they hope science will achieve in the future. You can join the conversation now by commenting on the video or across your social media channels using #ScienceWeek. So please welcome our panel this morning. They are Evan Gerling from Cork Educate Together, Dahab Sharby, who's a computer science student in TU Dublin, and Conor Megan, who's a student in DCU. You're all very welcome, guys. Good morning. Maybe we might just get some introductions out of the way. So only because you're in the top left corner of my screen, Conor, we'll start with you. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
So hello, my name is Conor Megan and I am in DCU studying Marketing, Innovation and Technology. I have a great interest in science and all things science, and I am very delighted to be a part of this panel.
Thanks, Conor. Dahab?
My name is Dahab. I study business computing in TUD Dublin. I'm interested in programming and design, and I also like the business aspect of things. And I'm happy to be here today.
Thanks very much, Dahab. And Evan?
Hi, I'm Evan. I'm in transition year at Cork Educate Together secondary school. I'm interested in STEM and kind of the philosophical aspects of it.
Yeah. Brilliant. And I know you're very interested in philosophy and have done some thinking about philosophy and AI and ethics. So I'm looking forward to hearing some of your thoughts. And maybe we'll start off talking about AI and ethics, because that's one of the 4 topics in the toolkit. And Conor, when we think about our daily lives, AI has crept into it almost silently in a way. It's in our Spotify playlist recommendations, YouTube playlists. It tells us what to buy if we're ordering online, and we're sort of encountering AI in lots of different ways. And I'm wondering, do you think that the public know that much about how much they're seeing, and should they know when they're interacting with an artificial intelligence that's manipulating what we see or what we hear?
Most definitely, AI is a part of pretty much everything in our day-to-day lives. Right, like from you said previously, from the content we consume to the things we buy, everything is suggested by AI. Studies have shown that AI knows us as well as anyone, even better than our closest friends. And this is because it has such a large set of data to base this information off. So everything you do online is tracked, right from where you hover your mouse on the screen to what you click on. And all of this data is then recorded and used to fuel these assumptions that it'll make about you and your interests and hobbies and such. And so, yeah, I think that the people are probably not completely aware to the full extent of how much AI really knows about us. Because I remember when I heard these statistics first, I was shocked, and I'm sure many people would be too. And I think you've seen that in recent years with, I suppose, the pushback of how much data is being collected upon us with new GDPR regulations and the whole hearing with regards to Facebook in America. And I think people are feeling concerned about this invasion of privacy and how much they know about us. From my perspective, as you said previously, that sort of suggested media, I find quite useful personally. So I know myself that I'd be lost without Spotify recommending me new music. I know I probably wouldn't have discovered so many great artists so many for it, and it's because it knows me so well and it knows what I might like and might like to listen to. So I think we can approach it with a blanket statement of, oh, collecting so much data is a bad thing, but there definitely are positives to it, and I think that can't be understated. However, I think we've seen in many countries across the world how when too much data is collected, this information gets into the wrong hands, bad things can occur. And I think we do have to be careful and very conscious of the power that large data sets and AI can implement on our lives. I think one of the things that is most concerning is that, and it's briefly discussed in the school resource that is sent out and is available online, is that AI can often inherit some of our own prejudices in the big data sets that it's aggregated from. And one of the concerns with that is that if people have many prejudices and discriminations against perhaps minority groups, this AI can inherit these discriminatory qualities. And this could be extremely negative over a grand scale thing. And as concerning as that is, I think one of the things to note is that prejudices and discrimination often change throughout time. So I think if we look at things that were completely unacceptable 40 years ago, or are acceptable 40 years ago that aren't acceptable today, it's safe to assume that in 40 years into the future, things that we do today, every day, that are quite normal will be completely unacceptable. So unless the AI is taught to adapt and develop an awareness to update these, I suppose, prejudices and discriminations, we could be in a very dangerous future where the AI is unaware of the problems that it's causing and could really severely affect minority groups or whoever is being attacked at that time.
Yeah, it's a big conversation at the moment, isn't it? The built-in biases of AI. Dahab, are you someone who's very happy to make the trade of your own information for the benefits that AI can give you? I mean, I'm someone who uses Strava for my cycling, and it uses AI to recommend routes, to show me how I'm comparing to other people. And I get a lot of benefit from that, but it also knows where I've been for a 2-hour period. Are you someone that is okay with giving your data to AI to get that benefit back? And do you know what that relationship is?
Like for me, I'd use different things, but like I wouldn't put in information. Like I just, if they asked for my name, I'd put that in, but I wouldn't be given too much like data about me,
Right.
because I just wouldn't like it to be there. Because like you don't know exactly what could happen with that information.
What about, though, if we think about women? So, for example, Amazon not so long ago ran this recruitment tool, and it was heavily biased against women because traditionally women hadn't been hired in these roles. It ran this sort of computer learning, machine learning program through all of the successful applicants for its company and its hiring policy, and it found that it was very heavily biased against women. If you aren't represented as an individual, as a woman, as a young person, as a student, then the data will never fix itself. Do you not need to be part of the whole AI spectrum to be able to get the benefits from it?
It really depends. Like in some things, it is very beneficial, but then when you do think about it as well, there's like the downside of things. But like as you did say, you would like to be part of it and part of the AI system because yeah, you would like to be represented.
What about medical information? Do you think that we should share our medical information for the benefit of the community that can be used in AI? For example, sharing genetic data that might spot diseases for and potential cures. Do you think that we should be happy submitting very personal data if it's going to be used by AI for good?
Yeah, I would agree because like you might have something that nobody would know about or there isn't a cure for, but then when you do represent your data, like there'll be solutions for it or cures or medication that could be developed.
So, Eben, how do you feel about this? There is a balance between AI and being a fantastic service that can both, spot potential cancer, give us better recipes, help us buy the thing that we didn't know we wanted, and the fact that this information can sometimes be used against us. Where do you sit on that weighing scale?
Personally, I kind of accept the trade-off of data for kind of better like recommendations, kind of tailored to my interests, like with YouTube or Spotify. It comes in handy, just like finding new content. But I would see why people wouldn't be willing to give up their data so easily. And I think there should kind of be an option um, for services to not collect your data and maybe have not tailored recommendations, but just not have to do that trade-off necessarily.
Do you think that then that if a company is going to use your information for AI and profile you as a customer, do you think that should be more explicit? Because certainly, I don't know about you, but when I look at the terms and conditions on apps or on websites, I just think yes.
Yeah, I think maybe they should be more explicit. I think, yeah, 99% of people wouldn't look through terms and conditions. So yeah, I think they should make that more kind of clear that you're consenting for your data to be used. A lot of websites do that, though, of like accept cookies and all that. But yeah, I'd agree.
Connor, what about the increasing prevalence of AI in our homes, Google Assistant, Amazon Alexa, and so on? Are you concerned with the presence of these artificial assistants in our home, and what sort of changes do you see coming due to the increasing dependence on them?
So in recent years, as you said there, AI has become even more prevalent in our homes, and that will come with benefits as well, because AI does learn off data sets, and the more AI is prevalent in our homes, the more data it is collecting. Now, obviously, there is negatives associated with that, but it will increase its knowledge of us, leading to improved recommendations and so on and so forth. But yeah, no, there definitely is concerns, but it is interesting to see how people have become so accepting of literally having a microphone in the middle of their living room or every room in their house in many cases, which would be something that would be completely alien to 99% of the population, probably only 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to see how people become so accepting of having all these trackers essentially surrounding them every day in their lives. And it'd be interesting to see if that continues to develop in the way it has done the last 10, 15 years into the future, and how many more microphones or tracking devices will be on us in 10, 15 years time.
Is that sort of level of acceptance a bit worrying to have? You said you don't give your personal details to these machines. The fact that we've become sort of just accepting and clicking yes and bringing these microphones into our homes, as Connor said, is that a concern for you? Do you think we should be doing that?
Well, it is worrying because like you don't know what like the microphone could be listening to, or it could be recording, or what information is given back to like the feedback system or whatever. Like it's more like you're consenting to something without knowing that you're actually giving your consent.
Yeah, and that would be a concern for me. I also, when you are getting a single recommendation, if I start ordering shopping through Alexa or Google Assistant, which shop is it using? Is my local butcher down the road, do they know how to get their products onto Amazon Alexa, or sorry, Alexa or Google Assistant? Is that a worry for you, Eben, that we might see a sort of change in society where there's the people who understand and get technology and the people who are left behind? Is that a worry?
Yeah, I think that kind of with those big companies, it could lead to kind of monopolies on certain products. Like usually if you're like ordering something through Alexa, it wouldn't give you like a huge list of products. You would say like order bacon or something, and it would just kind of choose one for you. And I think that could very easily kind of crush smaller brands. If Amazon kind of launched their own line of a certain product, it could easily just kind of add that to your shopping cart automatically.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that would be kind of worrying.
Yeah, and sort of increasing that sort of control that these larger companies that understand technology might have. But we're being very negative about technology. And Eben, I know you talked a little bit about AI and art in your work, and it's something I hadn't spent a huge amount of time thinking about. What questions were you asking about art and ethics and AI?
Well, I think the main thing is that kind of it ties into the question of like at what point is AI considered human? Like because our brains are just very powerful computers. So if you replicated a brain and created a piece of art, like surely it would be fair to say it's art. I think it depends on kind of the level of intelligence and kind of if it can have a motivation behind art. Like if you just had an algorithm that kind of spits out random paintings all day and then one happens to be nice, I don't know if that could necessarily be classified as art. But if it kind of if you gave it a data set and it could kind of just come up with a piece that for a specific reason, I think you could classify it as art, perhaps.
Dahab, could robots ever make art?
Probably can. Like, I think everything in the future, like robots could do anything you actually want them to do.
And you don't, and obviously art implies some sort of understanding or some greater meaning. Do you think that's possible for a machine?
I would say yes, personally, because I think once you code it or program it to do something, you could literally ask it to do anything. Once you just put in the right code, the right layout of what you want it exactly to do.
And I suppose with some machine learning, we're seeing some pieces of art are actually being produced that the coder never intended, but end up being quite beautiful. And I suppose the question then becomes, what is art? And that is a question, I suppose, painters like painters and artists like Duchamp and many others, Damien Hirst, Banksy, they've been asking that question for quite some time. Connor, do you think robots can make art?
Well, I think the question of can they make art is a strange one, because art is fundamentally subjective. Art is truly in the eye of the beholder, and I believe many people's definition of art may vary. And so to answer that sort of question, you'd have to really get a concrete definition of what art truly is. And I'm not sure if that really fundamentally fits with what art is to be.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of people would argue on that basic premise of what art actually is. I'm a very much a determinist. I believe that human beings are nothing more than hardware running software, and so I believe if you get a computer strong enough, I believe it can create love. I believe that is theoretically possible, because if you go back our evolutionary tree, keep going back, we ended up coming from chemicals in rocks. So I do think, given enough time, machines could create art, but probably not art in the way we think about it anytime soon. So that's a really interesting subject to explore. And if you download the toolkit, there are lots of different ideas within art, AI, and ethics, including the trolley problem and how cars might make decisions in the future. But I wanted to also touch on another subject that's in that toolkit, and that is the subject of vaccines, because of course, the world has been fascinated with vaccines very much since February, and the uptake of vaccines, particularly the HPV vaccine and other vaccines, has dropped in many countries, in sections of those countries, for a number of reasons. Sometimes it's misinformation, sometimes it's a lack of access, and so we're going to talk a little bit about vaccines and which is more important, the individual rights or the greater good. And so, Evan, I might start with you. Say, for example, we get a COVID vaccine tomorrow. Do you think that students should be allowed to go to school if they haven't gotten the vaccine, potentially infecting others, teachers, and spreading the virus? Do you think we should be able to restrict movement of students or people based on whether or not they've taken a vaccine?
It is a tough one. I think especially with like a hypothetical COVID vaccine, considering it would have kind of the average vaccine I think takes about 5 years from start to finish. And obviously they're hoping to have one by maybe next year. So obviously maybe there might not be enough testing. But there's like certain people like with autoimmune diseases who can't get vaccines.
But say they had an exemption. I guess the fundamental question is the individual rights more important than the rights of society? Who do you favor? Do you think someone should be able to say, I'm not putting this vaccine, it's my body, I get to decide? Or do you think that person needs to be forced to think of the greater good?
I think I would probably lean towards mandating it just to protect people who maybe can't get it or are particularly vulnerable. I would probably lean that direction, but I definitely would see the argument for bodily autonomy and choosing what you do and don't put in your body. Obviously, education is a pretty fundamental right in Ireland, so that to deny that to people, it'd definitely be very controversial.
It would be very controversial, but of course, they're the really interesting questions we ask when we're thinking about ethics in science. Dahab, what do you think? Should we say to people, you cannot come into school, like we say you cannot come into the shop because you're not wearing a mask? That the idea is exactly the same. You could spread the virus. You can't come to school if you haven't got the vaccine.
I would say, like, I would be more going to saying, yeah, like people shouldn't be allowed to go to school if they haven't taken a vaccine. But then also it is their education, and like you just can't tell them you can't come because you didn't take the vaccine. But then like the vaccine is something that's good for everyone. Like it's not going to harm anyone and it's for everyone's benefit. So I think they should like just be mandatory and everyone takes it instead of being put in a situation where like you either take it or then you don't come to school if you didn't take it.
So I think that is that's a very sensible route. But when we follow the logic of either of these paths, it gets problematic. Are we holding people down to give them the vaccine, or are we saying you will be left behind in society, and people who don't take the vaccine, who make that choice about their own body, are therefore excluded completely from education, or have to educate themselves? They're kind of pretty crazy ideas.
No, like I think you wouldn't say that because everyone is right to their own education in the end and their own choices. But like I think it will come down to people not being like selfish about it or think that they just don't want to take the vaccine because they just don't want to take it. Like it's more of something for everyone, and it's like for them as well. Like it's just to not get harmed or not to get the virus or whatever.
Connor, the worrying thing, I suppose, for those who believe in the safeness, the efficacy, the importance of vaccines, and we've seen so many amazing developments in vaccines that have saved millions of lives. When we think of the age group of 18 to 25, we see actually quite a low take up compared to recent years of vaccines, and that of course is concerning for those who are very much in supportive and on the side of science and evidence and health. What do you think is happening, and do you think we are failing to educate that age group as to the importance of vaccines? Why is that dropping down, do you think?
Most definitely it is concerning, and I think the results of that could be seen in last year in colleges across Ireland. There was an outbreak in MMR, and that could be tracked to the, I suppose, lacking confidence in those vaccines around the early 2000s when these children would have been born. So I think you can see there has been evidence shown of the direct correlation between lacking confidence in vaccines and outbreaks of previously diminished diseases.
Yeah.
And I think when you look into the statistics behind vaccines and see the astronomical success rates of many of these vaccines, with some diseases such as smallpox being completely eradicated due to vaccines, yet this lacking confidence in them, especially in recent years, it says to me that there's a severe communication issue between scientists and the general public. I wouldn't be questioning the science so much because the statistics show that they have been successful, but I would be questioning the communication and how they deliver that message. Having said that, with regards to a COVID vaccine, I would have reservations, as stated previously. If it was available tomorrow, it would not have gone through the same rigorous testing as an average vaccine would. And we can see in the resource that we heard videos from people who research vaccines and how long it usually takes and how rigorous these vaccines are being tested, not only until they go on the market, but even afterwards for years and years into the future, to ensure that the side effects are minimized as much as possible. And that just wouldn't be feasible if a COVID vaccine was available tomorrow, next week, or perhaps even in the next year or two. It just wouldn't have got the same amount of time or attention that an average vaccine would. And we've seen previously in this country, when they tried to push through a vaccine for the swine flu in the late 2000s, and the negatives with that. So it was trying to push through in record time to try and tackle this issue. Obviously not as large as COVID is now, but there was major issues, and many people have filed court cases against the state and have had success in them right up until just last year. So there are, I think there was 80 people or more than 80 people that were affected by this swine flu vaccine, which eventually had to be pulled from the market in 2011. So I think there are extreme concerns with mandating a COVID vaccine, and I don't think that would be the most ethical practice, making it mandatory to access certain things. And I think another thing that was brought up in the resource was if a COVID vaccine cost €100,000, how ethical is that in that you're excluding certain people from society? Well, even if we lower that to a more modest fee, and you still have regulations like you can't go to the cinema unless you have this vaccine, well, then you're discriminating on impoverished people across the country. So I do think there are a lot of blurred lines with making it mandatory or making it necessary to go to certain places.
Yeah, although that inequality exists already. I mean, I saw in the newspaper an article, Evan, about how rich people are dealing with the pandemic, and in the UK before the lockdown kicked in, there were many private planes jetting off to nice islands, whereas many of us are stuck at home doing what we're supposed to be doing. Others can afford to do different things, and a great example is Donald Trump getting the best possible care, while in America access to healthcare is patchy at best. What do you think about the idea of having to pay for a vaccine, and do you worry that if this vaccine comes out, there will be a prioritization that will not favor those who don't have money?
I do think it would be a concern. For example, if like someone from maybe a poorer household and someone from a richer household both were out of school, the poor person could be left behind. But if you kind of had more money, maybe you could hire a private tutor. I do think there's concerns like that, where it could kind of discriminate against certain groups. Definitely, especially if there's a cost to it or some sort of way to get it like first, by like with a fee. I think it could definitely leave certain groups behind.
I'm putting you on the spot now, Dahab, a bit, but how would you prioritize who gets the vaccine first?
I would say people with like the long-term diseases, like the people that are like that are more prone to like getting it, because like you have people that their healthcare is fine, they're perfect, they wouldn't be really prone to getting the virus as much as someone that's maybe asthmatic or has diabetes or cancer. Like I think these people should be prioritized to go first.
Yeah. Would you take it, Connor, knowing that you're more likely to have less of a reaction to it? Dahab is putting you in the front of the queue. How do you feel about that?
I would definitely be hesitant, and I think there could be cases across the country where mandatory vaccines could be made mandatory for certain sections of our society. Like, for example, there was rumors of perhaps the people in the army being testers in a way, because it would be such a large group. And I think saying to anyone that it is mandatory for you to take this, no matter what sector they're in, is completely unfair, from my opinion.
Yeah. But can we allow people to endanger others? I mean, this is a serious disease. We've stopped people from moving. We've put masks on them. We've stopped giving them access to a hospital unless they're wearing a mask. This is just one step further.
But then again, I suppose a mask isn't exactly endangering yourself. And history has shown with vaccines that have been fast-tracked through the system could potentially be endangering yourself. So I do think it's not exactly comparable.
What about you, Evan? Who would you put at the front of the queue?
That is a tough one. I probably would agree with Dahab that maybe there could be some sort of system for kind of ranking maybe the seriousness and how much someone requires it. It's really tough. And kind of on Connor, what I was saying, I would probably be a bit hesitant to maybe get it immediately. because there have been cases like thalidomide kind of medicine. There's maybe fast tracked and wasn't tested enough, and it kind of had devastating effects. So yeah, it's really difficult.
It is. I think it's a very difficult system. And even now in hospitals, choosing who to prioritize when you have a backlog because of COVID is a huge issue. So understanding the ethics of that, figuring out who should get the vaccine first, whether or not there should be a cost associated with, and whether or not we should restrict people's movement or their freedoms, whether or not they've had the vaccine, may sound like something that's in the distant future, but it's going to happen soon. And you'll hear people suggesting these ideas, as radical as they may sound to you. So it's time to have those sort of conversations. So during Science Week, you can have your say by hosting a discussion or joining the online conversation. Just hashtag Science Week. The school resources are available now on scienceweek.ie. Your voice is important. So get involved in Science Week, get involved in the conversation. And thank you so much to our panelists today, Connor, Eben, and Dahab. Have a great Science Week, everybody. We'll see you soon.